This is one of them shows. We need a little scotch.
Oh. How many bottles do we need to have on the set? I'm just wondering.
Well, it's Dr. White.
I'm pulling out the Texas. He's got water.
Oh, good. What you got in there?
Electrolytes. Electrolytes.
That's what I call this, too. Electrolytes.
Yeah, that's right. Amen. Hey, y'all. Welcome to CrossPolitic on Friday evening. This is kind of a later Friday evening show because we actually had to get everything and schedule everybody a little later. So that's why you're now seeing the show a little later at this Friday evening. So thank you for joining us. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. And we also have Dr. James White on the show to talk about something that happened this last week and a half. I'm not quite sure, but it's going to be.
We'll come up with something to talk about.
I'm told it's going to be a good conversation.
Maybe.
That's to the ad read now. That's to the ad read.
All right. So, all right. You know what, guys? We're on a mission. Now, today we're on a different kind of mission, but we're on a mission to make magazines great again. Now the timing on this is great because Mission Impossible 47 is coming out.
Whoa!
So it fits really, really well. So subscribe to our Fight, Laugh, Feast magazine. You got to subscribe to it or you're not going to be able to read it.
No.
Because it sort of goes together.
Can't even say it.
This is a quarterly mini book. I'm not sure anything that would have any article from Doug Wilson in it could be described as a mini book because it's got big, long words. You have to look them up. But a mini book like experience packed full of a variety of authors, a real variety of authors that includes theologically driven cultural commentary, a psalm of the quarter. How many quarters could you do with 150 psalms? Never mind. Recipes for feasting, laughter sprinkled throughout the glossy pages. Yes. Glossy page. It's not like the Watchtower and Awake, which is just plain stuff. It's boring. This is glossy, okay? Glossy page. Sign your church up. Sign your grumpy uncle up, who's probably a Baptist. And while you're at it, sign up the Pope, Elon Musk, and Russell Moore, who will market return to sender and won't even go there. So this magazine will guarantee various responses, sort of like CrossPolitic. And CrossPolitic is not held liable for any of them, and maybe not held liable for the wars that they start either. So I'm just saying, it's a disclaimer. Reading the whole magazine may cause theological maturation, possibly encourage your kids to take the Lord's Supper with you, unless my article's in there, and will likely cause you to randomly chuckle and enjoy at God's wondrous world. Sign up today. 4 issues and $60 per year. That's it. Go to fightlaughfeast.com right now to sign up. And I don't get a single dime for having gone through it.
We might have to. That might have been the best moment.
Do you got like an applause machine thing there? That's it. That's it. Way to go.
All right.
Way to go.
Man, I
Pastor Toby, you're fired.
I know, right? I was like, last time I was gone and you were on the show and you did the ad read, and I was a little jealous, for a little bit after that.
You brought it up several times.
I was like, guys, I'm just as good as Dr. White, but that's better than I've ever done.
That's brilliant,
Dr. White. That was better than I've ever done. I quit.
We need to clip that.
Yeah. All right. You know what? It just makes me think that he's coming with a big stick.
I know. So that was the setup.
So yeah, exactly. He's coming with a big stick now. So I think the meme war through this whole fracas was strong. And I was texting Dr. White earlier today, and he said that the Baptists really did beat us in this meme war. The Presbyterians in the meme war. They kind of did. The Baptists were pretty good.
Kind of did?
Yeah, they kind of whooped us up.
I'm going to tell you.
No, they wiped the floor with us.
They did pretty good. So bring up the verse. I got a couple memes we're going to show you. Before we get into the discussion, we got a couple memes that we're going to look at here. Baptists.
That's totally fair.
Vestments. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's man.
Okay.
That's good. Next one.
Hitting the other way.
I do think that was probably like the only Presbyterian one that made the list
that nobody
I'm pretty sure
saw.
that no one ever saw. Yeah. Next one.
Yeah.
All right, Grandma.
Sure, Grandma. Let's go get you in bed. Let's get you some mashed bananas and get you in bed. Next one.
All right.
when you see a dude who thinks he's a woman with green hair and 5 nose rings. Baptist.
Yeah.
Is that a double chin?
Okay.
Is there any more?
Next one. Yeah.
Oh my. Oh man.
Probably King David.
Probably King David said that.
That was when you get Samuel L. Jackson ones, you know that isn't reached to a feverish pitch.
Man,
Right there.
yeah.
In trouble.
These just kept going. Okay.
That
What
was
did we do
funny.
here?
Oh,
That was funny.
man.
Toby's face. That's a good one. Hey, you see his name tag?
Look,
You see his name
I
tag?
will say again, Presbyterians, you guys really, really suck right now.
Yeah, we got
I'm
worked
just gonna
over.
say it. Like we got
Yep.
killed and y'all didn't say anything, but
Yeah.
that's all right.
Is there any more?
Oh,
Baptist
Meme
meme
orbs.
lords. Yeah, there you go.
oh, there you
CrossPolitic.
go. Yeah. Hey,
We're the ones crying under the table? because the Baptists whooped us up on the meme.
I'm
on the meme
not
game.
crying under
Yeah,
the
yeah.
table, but you know,
All right.
fair enough.
What? Any more?
Any more? Is it?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And that is how Baptist theology caused
That's a
change.
good one. It's all mapped out. Follow our logic.
Guys, really seriously, the memes were hilarious.
Oh, they were.
I really thought they were great.
Any more?
That's
it.
That's the last one.
Sorry, we didn't have the brain one for you there, Dr. White. But
Yeah, well, it was a good one, but I was getting a little worried there for a while. You know, I didn't want you all, developing a tick or anything like that to be permanent or anything like that. I mean, it's already bad enough when Chocolate Knox hides every time I walk into the room and stuff like that. So I didn't want to really make it worse than that.
I already got that.
So yeah.
Well-
So I was getting a little worried.
Yeah.
well, Dr. White, I finally got a chance to watch your show that you did on the conversation. Was that I don't know? Was that
Tuesday?
Monday or
Tuesday?
Tuesday? Something like that.
I don't know. I was in Santa Fe.
You were-
It was
I-
Tuesday or Wednesday, but what? Yeah.
You were in your camper and you told us about
Yep.
the friendly cat. And
Yes, Marvin.
Marvin.
Yes, Marvin.
Marvin the cat.
Marvin the KOA cat. Go visit Marvin at the Santa Fe KOA. He's good.
But honestly, in all honesty, I just got in here. We haven't had a chance to talk about this at all. We just literally just brought you in, and here we are.
Yeah.
And I was just telling the guys as you were coming in, man, thank you very much
Yes.
for the show.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Your ending, especially your ending, was just glorious. Man.
Yeah, I mean,
It
your
was-
call to prayer at the end was
Yeah.
great. But I no, honestly, just thought the whole thing was reasonable, friendly,
Yeah.
thoughtful,
Challenging.
kind, challenging in
Yeah.
all the right ways. And I just wanted to thank you for it. It was great.
Look, Toby, I was standing in your pulpit a few months ago,
I know.
and I think, and look, I don't know if you guys know what's been going on amongst Reformed Baptists for the past 6-9 months now or so. But I've been getting canceled left, right, and center. I've got people calling me a neo-Socinian. I mean, it's been really
Weird.
unpleasant.
Yeah.
And part of it is honestly, when you stand in someone's pulpit, you have them speak in your church. You guys have been at Reform Con, and we've had this relationship, and no one has ever confused us as being in perfect agreement, because
Right.
every single time Chocolate Knox signs off and starts talking about baptizing babies, he starts ducking from me,
when
And
you're
so
around.
everybody understands that, and yet I just think that there's some type of relationship that develops when you minister the word of God together, when you read the scriptures together, when you partake of the supper together.
Amen.
And so to just simply throw all that stuff out when something comes up that we knew we disagreed about, but not quite on this level. Okay, I mean, the way it was stated was really, I think, what got stuff started. Because when I first saw the meme, I think at first I heard about was someone memed it,
Yeah.
or just put the quote up or something. It's startling.
Yeah.
But my first thought was, oh, great. Now I've got to track down all these programs, because I'm not going to respond to this without hearing what the context was.
Uh-huh.
That's just necessary.
Right. Thank you.
So yeah, we've got to do it that way.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on today. And this subject, guys, one of my points that I want to bring up, this subject, I think, is one of the most important facing us culturally. And as you guys know, I spent 50 minutes on the phone with David. I spent 25 minutes on the phone with Gabe.
2 hours. It was 2 hours, actually.
No, it wasn't. He loves me more than you.
He's been on the road a long time.
Where was my call?
I looked at my phone and didn't get a chance to talk to Toby, but we've already talked, and so we sort of know where we're going. And by the way, the program that Chalk and Knox did with
Jeff Wright.
Right, with Jeff Wright.
And Jason Farley, yeah.
He said pretty much everything I wanted to say in that program. He really did. But you guys went for 2.5 hours or something?
We were trying to be like you. We went for 3.
Is that what he does? He
can.
Okay.
We know you can.
Very rare. Very rare. I am significantly more concise.
Well,
I'm older. I don't have much time left.
I got in here right before you got on, and I said we're not going 3 hours tonight. So just so you know, we all got Dr. White's getting old, and he's going to bed.
I didn't say that.
That's right.
I didn't say that.
Hey, that's true.
That's true. I take it.
So, Dr. White, I think it would be helpful. I would like for you to take the first shot. You've listened to us. You've heard us.
You've done your homework.
You've done your homework, and I'd like for you to give us, just a short summary of your take on this conversation and your concerns.
Yeah, let me just lay it out, and then we're not going to be able to go through everything in the brief time we have, but let's do it. First of all, the title for the backstage was The Failure of Baptist Theology, right?
Right.
And it did, in fact, involve a failure, I believe, and most of us believed, Jeff believed as well, of accurately defining Baptist theology, and in particular, sacramentology, or we would call the doctrine of ordinances if we wanted to go that direction. Calling men and women, boys and girls, to submit to the lordship of Christ in faith and repentance is about as far away from teaching them they can autonomously choose their own gender as saying Doug Wilson's constant penchant for using obscure vocabulary teaches the world that they don't need dictionaries. Okay, there's no connection between the two.
He's been working on that one.
Yeah.
You think Doug does that? Just off the fly? No, he works on it too.
Yeah, he does.
And the point being, we do need to talk about what Baptists are doing when they call people to faith and repentance, because it's faith and repentance to the lordship of Christ, which means an entire worldview. I just challenge and must challenge the assertion that there is any meaningful connection whatsoever to any concept of promoting autonomy on people's part that is a part of the Baptist understanding at that point, whether Reformed Baptist or otherwise. Look, there are Baptists that don't even think about this stuff. And there are Presbyterians that don't even think about this stuff. We're not even talking about them. We shouldn't be talking about them. That's point number one. Point number two, this is far more important to me.
Yes.
Okay, this is more important to me. This is where we look at where we go in the future. Okay, once we get past this and once we hopefully benefit from this and stuff like that, what about the future? The real issue is that we can, and some of us have, clearly identified the central locus of the current sexual revolution and gender insanity, and it is not Baptist sacramentology, not by a long shot. The utterly childish meltdown on the societal level that we're seeing today did not require any errors to be taught by the church. This is something that Chuck Knox and I discussed.
Yeah.
It finds its origin and source in the deadly confluence of rabid secularism fed by Marx and all his modern sycophants, Darwin and his deadly naturalism, and plain old hubris and rebellion, where those in sin encourage others to do the same. And so, guys, I did my first debate on same-sex marriage, I think 19 years ago. I'm not new to this area. And I've debated Graham Codrington. I don't know if you guys have seen that. In fact, I don't tell me if you haven't, because I might start weeping. So let's let me just throw it out there. But
it would be fun to see him weeping.
I
guess. But
those aren't the tears you want from Dr. White.
I've done 2 debates. I've done 2 debates with Graham Codrington. Graham Codrington is a globally known futurist and public speaker. He's a very, very sharp guy. And I debated him twice in South Africa on homosexuality and gay mirage. These are sharp guys. And so I've been having to listen to them. I was going to ask if Jason was on, I was going to ask him, how many books do you think you've read from the proponents of the sexual revolution? Because they're not fun to read. Mm-mm. I don't know if any of you have read my book, Same-Sex Controversy. Mm-mm. That was 2001. And I had to read all sorts of books I didn't want to read back then, write that book. And that was 2001. That was 21 stinking years ago. Right. Can you imagine what's come out since then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've had to keep up with much of that stuff. And it's spiritually destructive. I'm going to tell you something. It's spiritually destructive to have to read this stuff. But the point is, I know where these people are coming from. I know what the background and the form of their argumentation, the worldview and everything else. And we need to be, you want to teach our children, you want to communicate to our grandchildren. Now that's all I'm talking about these days, grandchildren.
Right.
We need to be communicating to them with passion, not just the Christian worldview of man, but the Christian worldview of man, which gives you meaning and purpose and guidance and stability in this life. Because look around you, kids. You see people destroying their lives right, left, and center. You know why? It's because they don't have a foundation to stand on. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got to be communicating with passion. And the only way to do that is to know the real motivations for transgenderism. Mm-hmm. And it's not a communication because of some American Baptist understanding of autonomy. Mm-hmm. It is the whole worldview of Marx and Darwin and secularism that turns them into bags of fizzing chemicals. Mm-hmm. That's where it's coming from. And if someone really wants to make the argument, and if you guys want to, go ahead, but if you really want to make the argument that me as a parent, thinking about my kids, me as a parent saying to my kids that they need to bow the knee to the lordship of Jesus Christ and everything that meant. That means an entire worldview. That means he's your creator. He gets to define who you are. He gets to call you to whatever he wants to call you in this life. At Apologia, when we do baptisms of younger people, okay, Jeff or myself will ask the young person. Mm-hmm. When we're baptizing an adult, we'll ask specific theological questions about the deity of Christ, resurrection, issues like that. When you're talking to a younger person, one of the things that I've picked up from Jeff that I really like is, instead of using terms like, do you believe in the lordship of Christ? Does Jesus get to tell you what to do?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes. That's what he is. Is he your boss? Yes. He is Lord. He is boss. Right. You're using that kind of language. So that's what we're calling people to. The idea that communicates to them, oh, I can get to choose whether I'm a boy or a girl, taken into the secular perspective, is simply not even grounded in reality. And that's what made most of us just sit back and go, whoa, wait, and I tried to listen with some level of a compassion, I guess, to try to understand. But it still just left me going, nah, come on. There needs to be some serious rethinking of this assertion. So there you go.
Dr. White, one couple follow-up questions. One is, have you read Carl Trueman's book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self? And what did you think?
I mean, obviously, the background of continental philosophy and everything else is useful and helpful. I would like it to have communicated with a little less history and a little more passion.
Okay. One of the things that I found helpful in his book that I'm curious about is he talked about the whole idea of I think he called it a social imaginary. Just this notion that ideas, it's not like teenagers are reading Rousseau or Marx or Darwin and then saying, you know what, I think I'm going to change my gender now. What happens is that you've got these ideas and they seep into the water of a culture. And in such a way that what he described is, he says it makes certain things seem plausible. So that the idea that somebody, I think he says earlier on in the book, you know, if somebody told my dad 50 years ago, I'm a boy trapped in a girl's body, or I'm a girl trapped in a boy's body, no one would have a category for that and would just think, this guy's crazy, take him off to the crazy house. But he says these social imaginaries are things that they just ways of thinking that we don't think about that create sort of plausibility structures. Does that resonate with you? Do you think that does culture work that way?
Well, our culture is becoming less and less complex, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I mean, our culture is becoming permanently childish. Mm-hmm. The idea of reflection, the idea of critical thought is we are now emoting rather than thinking. And so I'm sure you've read Abigail Schreier's Irreparable Damage.
Yeah.
Familiar with
Yes?
Familiar with it. I haven't read it all.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I listened to it on Audible.
I have told everybody, if you are a parent, you must read that book because it is, I mean, you know, if Amazon wants to try to get rid of it, there's a reason for it. The point is that she documents that this movement is not even 10 years old. It really isn't. I mean, homosexuality, gay mirage, sure. But transgenderism, this concept, have there always been cross-dressers? Yeah, okay. The idea of sexual perversity in that area, fine. But 13-year-olds getting double mastectomies, giving poisonous puberty blockers to 8-year-olds. This is brand new, and it could not exist without TikTok and YouTube. And the vast majority, especially of young women who are experiencing this desire for testosterone, this happened fast, and it utilized social media, and it's tapping in to the collapse of the family. And I don't know how a social imaginative really expresses the purposeful confluence of the educational system, big tech, medicine, et cetera, to produce this astonishing aspect of the culture of death.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk, I mean, all of this is an expression of the culture of death.
Right.
All of this is rebellion against, Jesus said, I'm coming, they might have life. So what do you expect rebels to do? They're going to do everything they can to produce death.
Right.
They've been doing this for a long time. And I just don't know if the cultural imaginative format can explain the speed and the effectiveness of the social media production of transgenderism as we are experiencing it now, and as it is literally destroying mainly young women. There are young men that, you know, they get chopped up and everything else, but I'm not sure what the percentages are, but I think it's about 80-20 if I recall correctly.
Wow. Well, and I think part of, you know, if I walked into Corinth or some pagan nation,
Corinth.
Okay. Corinth.
Okay. All right.
I'm fine with how I said it.
All right.
And if I walked into a pagan nation and I'm the church, I'm planning a church, I'm going to be pulling my deacons out of the brothel houses. I'm going to be telling that, hey, excommunicating this guy who married this guy's mom. You know, it's the church's impact on that culture is very subdued and different because it's coming into a pagan nation. Where if I come into the U.S., which is drastically been a Christian nation for a long time, my analysis is going to be coming from a different angle because the church is more responsible for the condition of that nation than, let's say, the church in Corinthians.
Okay. I want to just.
Well,
I want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me piggyback off that. I agree with that. I want to say a couple things. First of all, the way you describe baptism, Dr. White, I want to be really clear that I have never once thought that anything we were trying to communicate was saying that the way you describe baptism has anything to do with the transgender crisis. So let me just, I've said that a few places, but I just want to say it again. Submitting to the lordship of Jesus Christ is just the opposite. We agree completely on that. And what I've meant, I wasn't on the original show, but what I heard when I listened to the show and what I believe Jason meant in terms of the most inflammatory comments has been a radically individualistic, revivalistic, functionally, if not actually, Arminian decisionism. Okay. Which is the opposite of the submitting to the lordship of Jesus Christ. And in this sense, Knox and I said in the follow-up show, even the Presbyterians are Baptists in this sense, where they make everything about I think Carl Trueman uses the phrase turning institutions and ceremonies that used to tell us what we're supposed to be, turning those things into platforms for self-expression. I think that, and so that's the first thing I would just say. I think that's what I've meant all along. I believe that's what Jason meant. That's what I think all of us have meant. And so I think modern evangelical is another word that a lot of us have used to describe the disease in our country, modern evangelicalism. And again, I would say, which has been vastly Baptistic, but I'm not talking specifically about the notion of credo baptism. I really am not. But what I'm saying is popularly, many people have said, this is the place where you express emotionally and experientially sort of your sacred self. And
Jason actually said that in the show too.
And I would say, despite a good bit of pushback, there have been a number of Baptists who said, that's exactly the church I grew up in. A lot of Baptists have been writing into us and saying, oh yeah, that's exactly the church I grew up in. All the emphasis was on you feeling good, you looking deep down inside, you making a decision, and then that sacred, holy choice being then honored and respected in this moment where you go forward and you get baptized. Not as a submission to the lordship of Christ, but really functionally, even if they don't say this, a submission to their own lordship.
Their own feelings.
Their own feelings, their own autonomy. And I think modern evangelicalism does that in a lot of their worship. I mean, it's this, we're going to massage your feelings, your ego, make you feel good, and we're
going to turn the lights down.
Yeah, and I think again, maybe I have a little bit of a misconception of Baptist world. I don't know, and I'm willing to be corrected on that. But I would just say that's been my perception: is that America is predominantly Baptistic. And predominantly in terms of church attendance, in terms of Christians, and is this sort of modern evangelical emotionalism, revivalism, and then if it doesn't work, go do it again. If it didn't really mean it, go do it again. I've talked to Baptist friends who said they got baptized 4 or 5 times because they didn't really mean it the first time, and so they wanted to do it until they meant it. And so I've been given this impression.
That was me.
Okay. And so I don't think that's what you think at all. I don't think that's what my Reformed 1689 confessional brothers believe at all. And so that's why it never really crossed my mind initially when I listened to it, like, why in the world would they take this to mean talking about them? Because of course they mean, even though we disagree on the timing, I know that what you mean is Jesus is Lord, not you. And so that's maybe the place where we talked past each other a little bit.
Well, but let me just push back by pointing out that when the statement was made, the Gabe offered
Jason
the opportunity to sort of tone down what had been said, and instead there was a doubling down. No, I said it was he used the definite article,
the cause
Yep.
of transgenderism, and then it sort of got a little bit talked over, because you guys do that. But yeah, there wasn't any organ music, but the guy who does that normally talks over people. Then it was said, well, if not them, they're pastors. So there was the assertion that it's the pastors, that it's the Baptist pastors, and it would have taken 10 seconds, because one of the confessions of faith that can be used in local assemblies in the CREC is the London Baptist Confession of Faith.
Right.
That's right.
So it would have taken 10 seconds to say, now, we're not talking about those guys. We're not talking about guys who understand the covenant, argue with us about the nature of the new covenant, do all sorts of stuff like that. We're just talking about the people that, well, let's just be honest, don't take seriously the whole concept of the sacraments to begin with. Because Jeff mentioned on the program, and he's right, that they're major Southern Baptist churches. Now, he said that they had a slide that you went down into the baptistry in. What I heard and actually saw at one of the churches was they put the baptistry for the use for kids in a pirate ship. And so when you would get dunked, the guns would come out and fire.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've grabbed those clips for Wretched.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is someone that does that has not thought seriously, does not take seriously,
Right.
has no interest in having a connection with the church in the past or anything like that in regards to what baptism actually is supposed to be about. And so 10 seconds would have given you all the shield that you needed to laugh at the memes, but say, no. We made a clear differentiation. And yet when the opportunity was there, it's like, I hold the pastors accountable for this.
Well,
and I think a lot of people heard you all saying that calling children to repentance and faith is the moment where you give them this autonomous opportunity. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know about all these people and saying what their experience was. Maybe my experience, because I didn't grow up Reformed Baptist.
Yeah,
I was independent fundamentalist Baptist. I was ever heard the GARB?
no.
Really?
Yes, I have.
Oh wow, yeah, General Association of Regular Baptists. So
Wow.
you didn't swim in a pool with a female, and
oh yeah, I know you guys.
I remember an entire sermon on how pantsuits were going to send you to hell.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was my background, but we took baptism pretty seriously.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have any pirate ships, and there wasn't anything like that at all.
I just want to ask one follow up. Is so the just a couple minutes after that in the show, Jared Longshore did say, now if some of my Baptist brothers are tempted to be offended at this, I want to put my arm around them and I want to say to them, we are not saying that you're not doing transgenderism. You're not involved in transgenderism. And so like he did come out and say, look, we're not saying that there's this direct cause. And Jason didn't say, no, I want you to know. He chuckled in agreement with him. And the whole conversation around it was, again, talking about, I would say, this radical individualism versus this more covenantal thinking and the driving the wedge between an identity that God sovereignly gives, or an identity that individuals choose for themselves and make for themselves, and that is what's being honored and made sacred.
And
this allows us to touch on something that I think a lot of people, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's been a secondary surge of social media pushback, and it's pushing back against people like myself who aren't just simply doing the nuclear option and cancel your Canon Plus subscription type of thing that was going on there for a few days. And what they're basically saying is, well, look, what they are actually saying, you guys are actually saying, is sacerdotalism. It's straight up infant baptismal regeneration stuff. And I'm sitting here going, okay, look, it would be helpful in this situation if we clarify what we think baptism actually does. Because, okay, let's say, I'm still utterly unconvinced that even if all the Southern Baptist, well, not Southern Baptist, but all the Baptist and Southern Baptist churches in the South were doing this is your opportunity to express your real self idea of baptism, which I'll be honest, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but I've just never heard it expressed that way.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Dallas, and all my Baptist friends went through that process.
Well, look, the average Southern Baptist, do you know how often the average Southern Baptist is baptized?
How many?
How many times?
2.75 times.
Hey, they got nothing on us charismatics.
How many times have you been baptized?
At least five.
Oh my gracious!
Wow.
And my sweet grandma's been baptized 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
And it's almost always the same pattern. You get baptized. We'll call it an almost infant baptism. You're the early one where they can barely see your head in the baptistry. Then you're on some youth retreat at 13, 14 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
And I now I'm getting serious about my faith, and I really wasn't serious back then. You get baptized again. And then your 0.75 is the people who finally mature at age 25 and go, I didn't have a clue what in the world was going on back then. I had no idea what any of this meant. And so you get baptized again. So I get that.
Yeah.
Because that's just the facts. That's the numbers. But still, even in those situations, I've just never seen a situation where, and again, maybe I was just in better Baptist churches, but where it was like, this is your self-expression type thing. But that aside for a moment, a number of statements have been made in regards to what baptism actually does. And this will always be my grave concern. What was my, you guys know when I first met Doug?
Was this your debate with him?
The Catholic debate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 2004. And this was
our Catholic My Brothers debate is what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what was the background of that? It was the Federal Vision stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I took and continue to take a tremendous amount of heat and criticism because from the Auburn Avenue conference, what year was that? 01?
Yeah, I think
02? 01? 02?
01 or 02, right in there. Yeah.
It was somewhere after we survived Y2K.
Yes.
Thankfully.
Yes.
And that was the title of that conference was Federal Vision Conference.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So from the beginning, when I listened to all those presentations as a relatively more younger man back then, I had to differentiate between the various speakers because I could tell that they were at different places in a spectrum. And I always saw Doug in a different position than many of the more radical proponents of the position.
Yeah.
And as you know, he has disassociated with the terminology. He and I have done a Sweater Vest dialogue talking about justification and faith and grace, election, and all the rest of this stuff. But the big issue comes down to, what does baptism do? And I think a lot of people were basically hearing that, well, baptism marks you out. And that's why we're not bringing this criticism against ourselves. You brought criticism against Presbyterians for all sorts of bunch of other things. And by the way, you keep bringing up Revoice, and I sit here going, I struggle to see how you guys are in any way, shape, or form even connected with.
Oh, that's another conversation.
Yeah.
That's another
easy
conversation.
for me,
but go ahead, Doc.
We wear robes.
So anyway.
Hey, can I just fit something in there real quick, Doc, and I'll let you keep going. I just want to fit inside there that there actually was, especially in the backstage, I said to Jared, so if I just start baptizing my babies, that's it. And he said, to both Jason and Jared, they said, no. because there is this point where it's like, just because you do these things, it isn't like us. They didn't say it like this, but I'm verbalizing it like this. It's not a vending machine. You don't just do it and it happens.
It's not ex opere operato, to answer your question.
It's in faith.
So you heard me. You heard on the program.
Yeah.
My guys, I have seen ex opere operato sacramentalism destroy men, their ministries, their families, denominations, and I hope you hear my heart. There is a temptation toward externalism,
Yes,
even amongst the Reformed.
yes,
especially amongst the Reformed and our liturgy and all those things.
I
We can present the outside of the cup really well in our denomination.
Okay, so if we are going to, I think Doug and I probably agree, and I think hopefully, I'm not sure where you guys are on this. We've talked about it in the program before. I could see some dark times ahead.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I could see an extended period of dark time ahead, with still believing Christ is going to put all of his enemies under his feet.
That's right.
But we, at the same time, might still be in the early church.
Yeah.
And if we are, that means there could be some really challenging times right ahead of us. And I'm just simply saying, it is going to be our dedication to the absolute freedom and sovereignty of God's grace in the salvation of those whom he chooses.
Amen.
That is going to be that and an absolute confidence in the word of God, absolute acceptance of its ultimate authority. Those are the only foundations that are going to last and provide us the foundation for rebuilding after all this mess collapses.
Amen.
And the acid that can destroy it is any form of sacerdotalism. Any form of it.
Hey, I'm with you. If you have, I don't know why you're not playing the organ for Dr. White.
Trying to find.
I mean, where is the organ?
So, Doc, I just want to say a couple
You're
things.
not even wearing a suit. You're not even wearing a suit.
I know. I mean, usually am. Well, because I wore the Fight Laugh Feasting.
I'm better dressed than you are. I am better dressed.
Sacerdotalism.
Hey, look, he's got that cross on and everything.
Are you trying to
looking kind of papist over there?
Hey, hold on.
It's a Navajo cross, by the way.
One
That's not
controversy
really
at a time, people.
One at a time.
So, Doc, actually, it's funny because I think Jason's not here. He's actually in Texas trying to make money and stuff like that. He would love to be here and love to talk with you, I'm sure. I want to set that up. Maybe a Knox Unplugged, a 3-hour conversation. That would be awesome. Is that a yes?
3 hours?
We're live right now.
Do you have enough Depends and Geritol?
No, the question is, Doc, do you have enough Depends?
That's what I meant.
No,
3 hours is a little long.
No. Whatever time you want to go, we'll let
That's
you go.
good.
But seriously, you're welcome. I would love to have you come on Knox Unplug and work through more time and details and work through this a lot. But what I wanted to say is that was actually the whole point that Jason was trying to make in the backstage. He was trying to push to Psalm 8 to say
Psalm 11.
Psalm 11. Thank you. Psalm 11. Like, what do we do
when the foundations are destroyed? What do the righteous do?
Yes. Look and say, Lord, judge me. Run to the temple, judge me, and find if there's anything in me that is causing or the act of this, and then save us, right?
Yeah.
That we are in trouble. And so I don't think that Jason would disagree with anything you just said, Pat, right there. And also, I want to bring this up. Jason was inside of the Fight, Laugh, Feast Fam app, which I'm sure Dr. White has, so he's already seen this, right, Dr. White?
He's downloaded our app.
At my phone. I'm actually concentrating on what you guys are saying. I'm not looking at my phone.
Yeah, this is yesterday I found this. So
okay.
I was listening to you. He said, what I meant was that the radical individualism of modern evangelical Arminian relativistic non-covenantal seeker focused Baptist denominated but not solely credo Baptist therapeutic learning American Christian church without the brakes installed, breaks being the spirit and the word in our tradition, leads to the movements like the transgender movement. God yanks the leash when when we make errors in certain directions. And one of the ways that God yanks the leash is that he lets some of our neighbors go all the way in that direction. Okay, so and I know that you might not agree with the ending result of it, but at least there's some details of clearing up what he's meaning by what he was trying to say.
If that had been said originally, we wouldn't be sitting here, and all those memes wouldn't have gotten produced.
Which would be a real bummer. I'm just saying.
It would be a real bummer.
I wouldn't have got 15 minutes with you.
But I still push back on. I think we have identified 98.5% of the motivation, source, and power behind the transgender movement. I don't think the last 1.5% is going to make all that much of a difference. And my concern is I just think that it obscures where we have to be focused.
Okay.
Everything that was just said, because that description, which was this long, that description was an argument in and of itself against the worldview that has produced the transgender movement. It's the idea of us being autonomous creatures,
right?
But it's not just that. The one thing missing there that is absolutely necessary for transgenderism is that there is no creator, there is no day of judgment, there is no purpose, there is no objective truth. This is a massive worldview issue. We all agree about that. Mm-hmm. But I think we end up confusing people when we drag in something about, well, the church has taught the world. And you and I discussed this.
I know.
You and me and Gabe, we all did the same thing. When you say
I wasn't part of it. I wasn't part of it.
Because you ain't black, though.
Well, you weren't on the original program. But again, when we talk about the church, what are we talking about? We're not talking about, hopefully, any denomination, any group of churches that actually take seriously our calling to proclaim the whole counsel of God.
Yeah.
I mean, so what do we call those people? When I mean, obviously all the Paedo-Baptist female minister rainbow stole ladies who are doing their thing, the world looks to them and uses them against us, don't they? Mm-hmm. See, there's no unified Christian position here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Does that have anything to do with the true church, first of all? Or is it our responsibility to take the lumps and just directly say, synagogue of Satan? That's not the church.
Well, okay,
that's...
So Doc, so this is, let me just, okay, I'm going to try and explain this without taking too much of the time because I know you got to run too. But when I look at this, I don't think that
No, you said Toby has to run.
Oh, well, in that case, all right.
You said Toby has to. Don't go blaming me.
Okay.
I've put everything aside to be with you all, but
Isn't it your bedtime?
See?
Don't play. I'll make you pull out one of those depends. Keep playing with me. We'll be here for a minute. No, but when I don't think the universe is random. I don't think it is random at all. I think that, so when I see something, I'm going to start first with me and my family. When I look at my children and I'm seeing my children engaging or what did you say? You're going to get me on something.
I didn't say anything, but I was listening to you saying this to Jeff.
Okay, so I won't
earlier today.
Right. So I think that there's a reality to that. I also think that there's a reason that judgment starts in the house of God. I don't think that it's random that it does. I think that there is an outflowing from the house of God that has taught the pagans how to blaspheme. Right. So that's why they had
to wait a minute. Help me out here, because one of the thoughts that I had was we're supposed to share a reformed anthropology.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So why would an unregenerate God hater need to be taught? Now, look, when Israel profaned what God told them, their neighbors looked at it and said, "You're hypocrites." Okay, that's fine. But God never blamed Israel for starting the worship of Baal. He blamed Israel for collapsing into the synchronistic worship of Baal. But he never said, "You started this." No, they started it.
Doesn't the scriptures?
It existed before they came in.
But doesn't the scriptures say that the pagans blaspheme because of you?
Right, because but that wasn't all their blasphemies. They were blaspheming the name of Yahweh because his people did not live consistently with Yahweh's commands. But that had nothing to do with their child sacrifice. They didn't start Moloch worship. They didn't start the Baal worship. That the pagans don't need us to teach them to profane. That's what I don't understand here, is to say, well, it's the church has to teach the culture how to screw up God's creation. No, they do that. In fact, if what we're seeing now, in my opinion, I don't know what you think about this, but in my opinion, what we're seeing in our culture right now is the withdrawal of the hand of restraint on man's natural evil.
Yeah.
That's how the judgment is coming
on a nation that used to be a strong Christian nation,
but and also
a
in
godly
Ezekiel,
nation
Ezekiel, Ezekiel says, you Israel, you Judah have taught Sodom and Gomorrah a thing or two about how to disobey God. And he lists actually some other nations there too, not just Sodom and Gomorrah. And so the church.
What do you think? What do you think that's saying? Do you think that's saying that Israel is incredibly sinful and that's why judgment's coming upon them? Or is that saying that Sodom and Gomorrah hadn't been able to think up enough sins, but now, and obviously this is meant poetically because Sodom and Gomorrah didn't exist when Ezekiel was saying these things. Mm-hmm. But the point is that just as Jesus said Sodom and Gomorrah would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes, that's a condemnation of the people who claim to have all the light.
Yeah. Right.
My point is this idea that we have to teach the pagans how to pervert God's creation.
That's not
that doesn't follow from what's being said.
No, but I think no, that's fair. But I think what we're saying though is, so there is I guess what I would say back to earlier when you were talking about just exactly how fast the transgender movement has gone. I think you're absolutely right. It's insane.
And it's going 100 miles an hour as opposed to what it was before.
I agree with you completely. This is the withdrawal of God's gracious restraint, and it is his judgment. It's his turning us over. But I think the thing that what we're trying to say is, I think before that, I think there is a restraint both from God, but I think it's also sociologically and politically in cultures, when God's people are under God's blessing, it has a kind of blessing on the nation around them. The culture around is they're still bad. They still blaspheme. They still sleep around. They still do things that are bad. But when the culture is centered around God's people and they're under God's blessing, it has a restraining impact on the evil. There's still evil out there. Let me finish the sentence real quick. Let me just finish the sentence. So then what happens though is, I think when God's people then turn away from God, judgment begins with the house of God. God begins to turn his own people over to their sins. And so you get lesbian Eskimo bishops. And then when you get lesbian Eskimo bishops, the world says, hey, look, they're the people of God. I'm not saying they think this, but I think effectively they see there's no fear of God even before the people who claim to love God. Hey, let's go. And I think God lifts the restraint, and then the pagans go 100 miles an hour. Maybe
and that's what Jason Williams said.
Ordinarily, I think when God's people are under God's blessing and under the fear of God, the pagans, they're doing paganism at 40 miles an hour. Like, they're still doing paganism. They're still doing bad things, and no one needs to teach them to do bad things. But then when God's judgment falls on the people of God because they're being wicked, I think that has even more repercussions, and I think that speeds it up to 100 miles an hour. I think that's what turns on the TikTok and the YouTube phenom and little girls getting mastectomies.
Okay, there's just so many things there. But first of all, I think that what flows from the church to the culture is God's blessing, God's grace, God's truth, because that's not going to come from the culture. Right. That doesn't come from the natural world. Yeah, that is supernatural. That's grace. Right. And so the primary thing that flows from the church to the culture is grace and mercy and peace and harmony and understanding of the truth around everything else.
Which restrains evil, right? Which restrains some evil, right? What? Which restrains some evil.
Sorry? Oh, yeah. I have said many, many times, a sound, discerning church is a blessing upon any nation. And so if God determines in his sovereignty to bring judgment upon a nation, what is that going to entail? What's that? Is that not going to result in what we're seeing today, where we can't even identify? Look, the lesbian Eskimo bishop is not a representative of the Church of Jesus Christ, or is she?
I would say
she claims to be.
Right.
Is there? Do we have a category for Suda Delphoi? Paul's brother?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say
Was Aaron's son?
I would say the lampstand removed, right? Revelation. So I think there probably was a church there at one time. Most of these are Presbyterians. There was a believers there, but they sinned, they rebelled, they apostatized, and God gave them over to lesbian Eskimo bishops and removed the lampstand.
But are they still the church? But are they still let me give you a clear example. Union Theological Seminary. I call it the Walker Seminary. Walker as in the TV series where you've got dead people walking around that are falling apart.
Not Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, I was going to be insulted.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing. Because he's cool. But they went apostate in the late 19th century. So they've been apostate for about 130 years. But they're still there. And those are the guys that remember a couple years ago when they had the chapel service,
the prayer
where
for
the trees walked in.
I remember that.
Yeah,
They were praying
we
to
talked about
plants.
the show. Yeah.
We saw that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I call them the Walker Seminary, and they're more Buddhist today than they are anything else. But is that okay? They were once, they were built with the money of faithful Christians.
Yeah.
But after 130 years, do we still say that they're an empty lampstand, or have they just? When do you draw the line and say that's not the church anymore?
Hey Doc, I'm totally happy if you want to start putting together a council, or a presbytery maybe, and we can all come together and decide to completely remove them out. I'm totally happy. You want to start that? I'm with that. I'm with you. Let's do it. Let's create some more unity and make some serious judgment. Hey, as on earth as it is in heaven, let's do it, man. I'm
but
with
you
you.
hear what I'm saying? Because
yes.
when we talk about the Eskimo lesbian bishop, and I feel sorry for her, we're picking on her all this time. Did I just misgender her? I don't know. Am I going to? I don't know. But if we keep talking about her, the question is, she's not actually a bishop. That's not biblical.
Right.
She's in rebellion against God. Why do we allow her to represent, quote unquote, a part of the church and say this is how the church is teaching the culture? But it's not the church. It's not Christ's church. And there are still lots of us out here who have stood firm.
Right.
And we're saying to the culture, no, and we're living consistently with that, and we're raising our children that way, and so on and so forth. So what about that? I mean, right now, it seems to me, you talk about, well, it was such a great Christian nation. And I look back at every period in time in U.S. history, and there has been
sin.
The foundations came from the Christian scriptures, but there have been deists and heretics and unbelievers all along. And I don't know when at what point in American history do you feel there was a majority of true believers? I'm not talking about people who just darkened the door of a church 3 times a year. I'm talking about people who daily seek to bring their lives under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Has there ever been a time in American history where you would say the majority of the U.S. citizenry would be described that way?
Yeah, actually, Doc, I would have a problem saying that. Yes, in one sense, because you don't get the you don't get the kind of blessings that we have in America. Apart from, I don't think the world is random.
The blessing from God.
America, the most blessed nation that I can think about recently. I mean, we are uberly blessed in ways we haven't ever seen before in history. You don't get that randomly.
Okay. So
you have to have some sort
of that couldn't be a part of God's purpose in making a nation that would defeat Nazism and so on and so forth. That's a result of so in the 1920s then we were a mainly Christian nation? Have you read F. Scott Fitzgerald?
Who?
That was Calvin
Scott
Coolidge was
Fitzgerald.
president then. How dare you?
Hey,
Even look, even during
Cool
the
cow.
Civil War, even during the Civil War, where you can see a huge distinction in believers, and the vast majority of people were not following the lordship of Jesus Christ.
So you don't think that America has been blessed the way it has because of? Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm waiting for you to say it.
You don't
because
think that America's
God's
been blessed?
blessing,
Yeah.
God's blessing is not solely based upon, well, this is just a really, really great people over here, so I'm going to bless them. I mean, if that were the case, we should have nuclear weapons raining upon us right now.
Well, do you think
Right.
do you think China is going to fall because of the people of God that are being faithful that might be underground? Because I believe
I hope that that's the case.
I believe it though.
I would love to see that be such a glorious example of the overthrow of secular atheism, and that would be wonderful.
It's coming, Doc.
But and if it doesn't,
No.
that's not going to change. That's not going to change.
When my people who are
We're
called by my
sort
name,
of missing the point here, and that is, the idea is that I believe what flows from the church to the culture is primarily grace and truth.
right?
And what you're saying is, but yeah, apostate Christianity can teach the culture to do bad things. And I get the idea that, if the primary religious figures in a particular city are a bunch of apostate hypocrites, that's a curse upon that city. I get it.
Yeah.
Fine. No problem. The restraint isn't there. But are they the church?
I guess what I would say, though, is I don't know that it happens quite that fast. I know that
Right.
individuals are believers or not, they're regenerate or not. But I think that in culture, it shifts slowly. I mean, I went to seminary in a Presbyterian seminary down in Erskine, where there was United Methodists coming to the seminary who were believers. As far as I could tell, I believe they were born again, regenerate believers as I got to know them. And some of whom were going to be ministering in very liberal contexts. And there were, the seminary I went to was part of a denomination that does not ordain women, but there were even some women there who were studying because there was no men in their church, and they were going to go back, and they said, "There's no man here, so I'm going to be the pastor." And of course, I disagree with that completely and think that's unbiblical. Look for opportunities to talk to them about that, but at the same time, I fully expect to meet her in heaven. I mean, there's one woman in particular that I believe is regenerate. I think she's very mistaken. But there's things like that, though, where you can have regenerate Christians who are making pretty massive mistakes. You could have regenerate Christians
To influence the culture.
who start embracing Darwinism. You can have regenerate Christians who start embracing Marxism. You can have regenerate Christians that start embracing Romanticism and so forth. Now, at some point down the line, I do believe the lampstand's taken away. They apostatize. They're not in the faith. And yeah, I'm not blaming them, but I think, except for just the general way in which they're influencing their neighbors. But to the extent that churches are the light of the world, and there's a possibility of having that light put under a bushel, to the extent that the church is
Rebellious.
the salt of the earth, and that salt can have greater or less savor, I think that does have an impact on the culture around you. And that seems like a reasonable inference to draw. Like if you can, I mean, Machen is writing in 1921,
20s, yeah.
liberalism and Christianity, and you read what he's writing and you think, what? And so many of the people he's fighting, I'm expecting probably a lot of them went to heaven. They probably were regenerate, but were very, very confused about modernism. And he's fighting the good fight, calling them to repentance, telling them, no, the authority of Scripture matters, the virgin birth matters, the substitutionary atonement matters. And I think, but at the same time, there's still a lot of real Christians there embracing falsehood embracing error, and that is being promulgated to the culture, and they're still looked to as authorities. And people, I mean, back in those days, Presbyterian pastors would have their sermons published in the newspaper. People were looking to them as moral guides, and those moral guides, the pastors, are saying, hey, it's okay. You can believe in Darwin and the Bible,
and have a slave,
and you can have a slave, and and you can, and you can divorce your wife or whatever. And it's like there was error creeping in, even among those who really are regenerate, and they're going to get to heaven and find out they had a lot of things wrong, just like the rest of us, but really wrong. And I think that really does flow out of the church. Disciples people, kids, and frequently kids grow up in that. And of course, it gets even worse. I mean, we're talking about, I believe that Tim Keller, for example, is a born again believer, brother. I believe he's going to be in heaven. I believe he means well, has done a lot of good, but I see the fruit of his ministry and I'm very concerned about it. And I think you see a second generation, you see a third generation, and what begins as watering down to reach the masses or whatever, I think it's watered down even more. And second, third generation, you are apostate. And, they start with interpretive dance in the offertory right now. And I don't know how you don't end up with revoice.
We're over time, but let me just ask you, if God chooses to bring judgment upon a nation, is it in his purview and authority to contract the church during that time of judgment?
Of course.
What does that look like? Would that not involve apostasy? Would that not involve small faithful congregations remaining faithful against a cultural flow the other direction? And wouldn't in that situation, wouldn't it be appropriate to make the distinction to say that the faithful church at that point is the only source of light left in that society, and all the darkness and stuff is coming from someplace else? It's not coming from the faithful church.
Yeah, that's why they get raptured out, right?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No,
I do understand, Chocolate, that you have some confusions in your past.
Wait till I start speaking in tongues.
5 baptisms, so
I absolutely can't imagine that situation, Dr. White. I absolutely can. I think in this situation, I guess what we're saying though is I don't know that we're there yet. I think that very well may be in our future. That I agree with you. I think things are getting dark. I think they're likely to get darker before they get lighter. Nevertheless, I think I look back and agreeing with my brothers here, I think I see, I don't know history well enough to tell you there's a point in time where the majority were faithful, regenerate Christians. But what I would say is I think there have been times in America's history and in the Christian West broadly in which the central cultural leadership of the culture really was regenerate Christians. I think there have been times where the leadership of the culture has been regenerate Christians. Maybe, I don't know if full majority or not, but I would say that's part of what God's given us in this land. And I think what we're saying is that inheritance has been squandered. And that inheritance has been squandered, and God has judged his people, and he's turned us over to madness. And in turning us over to madness, has turned over the world to even greater madness at a breakneck speed, because judgment begins with the household of God. Mm-hmm. When the salt loses its savor, it's good for nothing but to be cast out. When the light of the world goes dark, then it's dark. It's really dark. The dark is very dark, Jesus says.
But there's always light in Goshen.
But there's always light.
Amen.
In Goshen.
Dr. White, I want to give you the last word. Go ahead.
Okay, well, can we agree that if in the original program, the lengthy description that you gave from Brother Farley, when you read from the post from the app, that if that had been clearly enunciated, you might be doing a Friday evening CrossPolitic on a completely different subject. Could we agree that
yes,
if that had
yes,
that level of clarity?
But it wouldn't have been nearly as fun.
You wouldn't have called me for 50 minutes. We wouldn't have had you on here reading the ad for the magazine.
All this good
we
stuff.
wouldn't have had any of this. And you know what, Dr. White? We wouldn't have been able to.
Look, Toby needs some ad copy instruction. That was a blessing. That's good.
He's not going to let that go.
Your advertisers deserve the best, don't you think?
That's true.
Yeah, that's the. I think that's the harshest thing he said.
That's true. And Dr. White, I'd go one step further. When our show is kind of like walking into a bar with three Presbyterians and their friends. It's not a systematic theology show, and so I think we can be sloppy in how we communicate on and define things sometimes. I think that's possible, and I think it happened here for sure. I don't have a problem with that.
As long as you don't mind these coming out, as a result,
come on.
I would just say 20 years ago, I don't think you ever would have done that podcast the way you did it on Tuesday night. I think you would have been far harsher with us and less gracious.
Why are you starting stuff?
Whoa.
I'm just saying.
Are you saying Dr. White's getting soft?
Because you were a brass knuckle fighter back in the day, brother.
What are you
and
trying
those
to say?
swords,
All right,
those swords would not have stayed on.
All right, I'm just going to turn off his mic, Dr. White. Dr. White, don't hurt yourself, please. We need you, man. What we about to go through, we need you.
Wow, Gabe, come on.
Damn, bro. Hey, Dr. White, I just want to say, seriously, I appreciate you, man. And I want to say
for real.
thank you for having this conversation, because one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of people who don't want to have the conversation. They just want to leave and break up. And I'm like, no, man, how can we continue to have fellowship if we don't say what we mean and get corrected by it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, let's have the conversation. Let's talk about it. There's a lot of things we haven't even finished uncovering, but I want to keep the fellowship. I want to keep engaging. I want to keep talking to my brothers, and I want to be sanctified in the process. So I'm grateful for it, man.
I think if you put this together with the program you did with Jeff, I think, like I said, that covered a wider spectrum of things.
It did.
I think that's really addressed most of the important issues, and it has resulted in all of you spending more time on the phone in the past week.
Oh my goodness!
Than you have, because I know my fellow elder Luke, I think was on the phone. Who is he on the phone with today?
Yeah, it's me.
It's you. Okay.
Yeah. No one ever calls me. I just want to point this out. No one calls me.
Because they know you're counseling people.
Yes. But I should mention, don't mess with Luke again. That's not a wise idea. Okay? He knows where you live, and
I got the text from Luke. I got it. Like I even saw his face in my text. Like when I was reading it.
Hey, so Doc, we get you on Knox Unplugged, right? You come on, you know what I'm saying? Like hang out with us, me and Jason.
We'll see.
Okay. You might want to close your ears.
I'm coming up. Are you guys going to come up down to
in
Arizona
in October?
I'm going to be at ReformCon.
Yeah.
Speaking there.
Have you checked to see if you
You go reformcon.com.
As far as I know, I'm still invited to speak at ReformCon, where I hope to give a hug to Dr. White and
Luke the Bear, and
Jeff,
and
my
keep
man,
talking about.
and keep talking about this. And actually, the last time I was down there, I gave a talk at ReformCon on how culture is downstream from the church. Hey,
I know.
And Luke loved it.
Maybe you should check that sermon out.
He's got like 17 books he's going to send you after
that. I'm telling you, you're going to have to face Luke directly, bro.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to love it. But we really appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much.
Might want to close your ears.
Thanks, guys.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids, go baptize them. Not in front of Dr. White. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. But Doc, if they're baptized, you take them into membership, right?
We're breaking up.
What?
We're breaking up.
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told.
We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations, the world's largest classical Christian homeschooling community. I'm launching a new podcast, Refining Rhetoric. If you like CrossPolitic or just listen to hear what crazy stuff they're saying today, you will enjoy Refining Rhetoric. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform. I practice the 15 tools of learning by interviewing great guests, looking at current events, and talking about cryptocurrency.